I think I'm live. What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Sarah from Sarah Styles here. We are live right now on my YouTube channel with ShopFoxBorrow and GirlyGrrlStyle. I am a reseller on Poshmark and on eBay if you're new here. And I also have an analytical dashboard for the reseller, analytical dashboard for reseller platforms, and then also one that looks at your inventory and tells you what sells. Before we get started into the panel, I'm super excited about this, but I do want to note I am doing a big survey for Poshmark data. I want to look at the data and see what helps drive sales. Do followers matter? Do listings matter? Do share, and how much do they matter? So we can all use our time efficiently. In order to do this, I need data. There's a survey down in the link below. It's completely anonymous. It takes less than 5 minutes for you to fill it out. And then the more data that I have, the better, and the bigger variance that I have in data, the better. So you have to have sold one item to have data on Poshmark. I need all the data. So fill that out below, share it with your PFFs. I have a post on my Instagram as well. Share that to your stories. Because it is anonymous, you do need to make sure to subscribe to my YouTube and then also follow me on Instagram so that you can get the results. But it's going to be super exciting. But without further ado, let's get started. So I have GirlyGrrlStyle, Tori from GirlyGrrlStyle here, and then also Brittany. I'm going to call her ShopFoxBorrow. I'm not used to saying her name. Brittany from ShopFoxBorrow. I'm going to go ahead and connect them. Brittany, we'll start with Brittany. Brittany she has been reselling for 8 years. She is a mom of 2 boys. She mostly does it full time, 30 to 40 hours a week. Her style is fantastic. She finds the best prints. She totally knows. She just posted a video today. Yes. And then she has one on Anthro brands too about, she's really good with Anthro and ModCloth, great at vintage. But then she also has an Etsy handmade that 12 years, right?
Yes. Yeah.
12 years. So this is Brittany. I'm gonna keep catching myself.
It's okay.
Go ahead. If I forgot anything that you think is important and you want to include, and tell us a little bit about where your business name comes from and how you got into reselling.
So I've had my handmade shop for, like I said, 12 years. So I've been on Etsy for a really long time. When I think it was like around 2012, I started to sort of I challenged myself to dress up, not down, for a whole year. I watched way too much Project Runway. And so I just decided that I was going to dress up every day for a full year. And so I started hitting the thrift stores a lot to sort of find new clothes. And around the same time I got into vintage. So I started to it was before my handmade shop was big, but I started to sort of sell some of my vintage on Etsy in that shop, and I had pretty good success with it. And, a lot of my friends and everything were really supportive. And so in 2013, I believe, I launched FoxBorrow Vintage. And I wanted something that was kind of local, but I'm also a really woodland lover. So I just kind of looked at the local map. And we have a place in Massachusetts called Foxborough, but it's FoxBorrough. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do a play on words with that. And I switched it to borough, they live in a borough. So I did FoxBorrow Vintage. And then I had a good friend of mine, an illustrator, do my logo for me. And I just loved how it came out. And yeah, so I sold vintage almost exclusively until 2015 when I had my first son. And then I really found myself getting into the ModCloth community and learning about buy-sell trade groups on Facebook, which I got to be a really big part of. And then from there, I learned about Poshmark, and then I listed some stuff on Poshmark that wasn't selling in my buy-sell trade groups, and I had good luck with that. And then just gradually, I started listing more and more until I was like, Poshmark is the bomb. So I've sort of switched most of my business over to Poshmark. And then I do a little bit of business on Etsy for vintage, and I still have my handmade shop, which does really well.
All right. I'm going to pop Tori on as well. I've she's kind of just hanging there. But very interesting. I mean, you know, your ModCloth and Anthro, it is something I cannot sell. So I think you have to know that little niche. And so I'm trying to learn, because everyone says that it's a niche or that it sells, and it just does not work for me. But let's get Tori on. She is from GirlyGrrlStyles. She's been selling for 25 years, people. Like, that's just crazy. Let me pop her on. She's been selling for 25 years. She does work a full-time job, so she does reselling 10 to 20 hours, but her husband is a full-time reseller, and they have an awesome YouTube channel. Definitely, she shares amazing content on her YouTube channel, lots of data-driven. This is how you run a business, the back end of it, that I don't think you get to see a lot. She shows that she's very transparent in what she shows and how she does it. She did Poshmark to become debt-free, which is like glorious. Most of my Poshmark money is going towards my student loans because they're like ridiculous. And if I did not love her enough, she told me that this year her goal is to donate $10,000 to charity. Like, how amazing is that? So welcome, Tori from GirlyGrrlStyles. I'm going to ask you the same question. Where did your name come from, and how did you kind of get into reselling?
Sure. Okay, so we'll start with my name. That's an easy one. I've always been a very big feminist, just really, you know, thinking that I work really hard to support all women. So the reason I'm telling you that is because it is related to my name. So I'm super girly, and it's something that when I was growing up, I kind of struggled with, because it was like, if I was girly, was I woman enough? Was I feminist enough? So then I embraced it. And I'm totally girly, obviously. So then the girl part of it, the GRRL, comes from Riot Girl culture, if anyone's familiar with that. So that was where I got to bring in the little bit of the girly with the grr. And then, of course, style, just because style is something that I really believe in. So our own personal style. So that's where the name comes from. It took a long time to come up with it. I'll be honest. It was, you know, all those bubbles and all the different writing out all of your, you know, beliefs and everything that represented you. So I was really excited, and no one has it. So that's also really exciting. It's hard.
That is hard to find. It's hard.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, in the 25 years part, a lot of people have a hard time believing that. But I mean, I started in reselling from a very young age, but I also started managing a buy-sell trade store when I was 18. And then I have been reselling pretty much my whole life. Not having a lot of money, I approached all of my purchases with the ideology that if I was going to buy it, it needed to have a resale value so that I could still have my rotating closet, but not spend a ton of money. And then I treated all my clothing really well to sell it. So yeah, so that's kind of the history. There's a lot more in there, but.
Yeah, I like it. I've been thrifting my entire life because we grew up, I don't want to say poor, but we were on a very tight, strict budget. And I actually did upcycle for a while. So I've been doing upcycle for not 25 years, but for quite a while. But this reselling thing, and it was, I mean, you can probably attest to some of this. Doing it online is fantastic. Like, I used to have to like do trade shows and fashion, and now I can like sit there and drink a glass of wine at 9 o'clock at night and list. Like, it's amazing. Well, I wish I had it like 15 years ago.
Yeah. And one of the things Bill and I talked about, so I was a manager at Buffalo Exchange when I was in college, and I worked at one that was franchise. And so I always wanted to open up, you know, my own, you know, have that like the vintage piece and the cool piece, but we couldn't afford it. I wasn't going to spend the money. So now we get to have this virtual, you know, store that we can curate and bring our own customers in. And it's pretty amazing where we are today with having online.
Well, and what's funny is I sold a lot of my upcycle at the Buffalo Exchange. They had, I don't know if the one that you worked at, but the ones here in Denver have like they had a little local area where you could like sell handmade things. And so I put my stuff, but then you had to hope that that one person that fit your size and had your style, you know, came in. So this is just an amazing, amazing world that we live in, with all of these options for eBay and Posh and everything. So I want to tell a little bit of people why I brought this group of people together. I'm going to be doing quite a few lives. I think it's very important, and there's a lot of value in talking with each other and getting ideas and just bouncing things off of each other. And different things work for different people. And I brought Brittany and Tori here because they both use their data, and they do use the dashboard, but they use their data to drive their business and drive their strategies. But we all kind of do it in a separate or in a different way. So I want to dig into the data and talk about it. GirlyGrrlStyle released what sold, no, 2019, how much I made video. And it is, oh my God, it's amazing. Even my husband was like watching it and he was like, I want to, because he's in finance. So he helps me with the dashboards and stuff too. And so he was like really into it. And he was like, oh, she did a great job and everything. And then Brittany just released her video, and a lot of their videos have data in the background about her top brands and what she's going to be looking for. So I want to kind of look back at 2019 before we move forward with it. So let's start with Brittany, 2019. What are some lessons that you learned? And then also, what are you most proud of in 2019?
So actually, I did a video where I kind of looked at all 2019 and I set my reseller goals for 2020. And really helpful. Like I took a really deep dive and looked at like all my different categories and what my sell-through rates were. And one of the things I learned was that I need to really focus on looking at my ASP in like a bigger way. So I have a really bad tendency to go thrifting at the bins and then pick up like a lot of like really small stuff that I might be able to make like $10 to $15 on. But I like rationalized it because, hey, it's only like 15 or 25 cents because it's super lightweight. Like it might be a pair of gloves or a handkerchief or a vintage apron or something like that. But the reality is that the amount of time that it's going to take me to photograph that, get my measurements done, get it into my inventory system, edit my photos, get it uploaded with a description, type out my tags if I list it on Etsy, and then put time and effort into sharing that. It's really like, it's almost like a negative value. So even though I'm only paying a very small amount for it, it sort of like all of the expenses of listing it add up because, you know, your time is money. And I have 2 kids. I make dinner, 5, 6, 7 nights a week sometimes. And so I really have to like prioritize what is important. And so I decided that I was really going to stop picking up those things and look at my ASP as like a room for a place I can grow,
Well, and I feel like what you're saying now is when I started actually looking at my data is exactly how I was feeling. And it's so, so, so hard at the bins because you're like, it's only like 25 cents and you're there, you have the high, and then you get home and you're like, well, like it takes me as long to list and do all the things that you said, this $10 item as it does this $50 item.
Exactly. And what was happening was a lot of times I would like stockpile a lot of it. So I would pick up like gloves or scarves or things like that. And I would just like put it all aside until it was winter time or springtime or whatever the right season was. And then I would find that I'm spending a whole day of my time just listing like 20 scarves that I've just gradually stockpiled. And I've finally worked through my death pile at this point. So I don't have a death pile anymore, which is great. But oh my God, all of those like tiny little accessories and just like things that you pick up without thinking. And it's just, I had to take a really long look at, do I even want to list this? And a lot of the times the things that I did decide to list, I was just doing it because it's vintage and I wanted to save it, and not so much because I especially love this pair of white, vintage gloves. Like it doesn't really speak to me, but I just don't want to I don't want to get rid of it because I don't know where it's going to go. I want to find it a home. So I'm kind of like, I have a soft heart for that sort of stuff. So,
And so something that I do with those, and something different works for everybody, but I will save a whole bunch of like scarves and stuff because they cost next to nothing at the bins, and take a couple pictures. I don't do like a full blown out listing, but then I offer them as free items, kind of similar to how you do your boutique items, right? To get people to your closet, and then it's free, but then it gets them to go back to because a lot of people I find don't shop the entire closet. So it gets people to go back to my entire closet and buy more bundles. but not ask for as big of a discount because they're getting a free item.
Right.
But you still have to go through and list it, and so you may not find the time benefit there. When I get things, I do it a lot with scarves or like jewelry, because you can take quick pictures of those.
Yeah, I have a weak spot for scarves.
And especially
me too.
You're like, it's like a quarter.
So something that I'm really proud of, though, I had my first ever $4,000 sales month on Poshmark in November. And that was like huge for me because I've been.
Okay, so tell us everything. How did you do that? My notes.
So starting in September, I have my best friend actually came to work for me full time. And this is actually her last month doing it. But it was for my handmade business. So the Purple Hedgehog. And so she was working on that, and that really freed me up to kind of exclusively work on Poshmark. And so I was able to list like 15 to 20 items every day, 5 days a week. And to really like push that and to go sourcing and to get through my death pile. And so it was just a lot of listing, a lot of listing, 15 to 20 items a day. And it's really hard to do because like after item 10, you just kind of like hit this space, and you can always tell like my first listing is like, oh, this fabulous 1950s skirt looks so great. It would go with this and this and this in your closet. And my last listing is like, it's a red skirt. Please, God, buy it. It's like, oh my God, I'm so tired of doing this. But so I was really proud of myself. That was one of my goals, to hit $4,000 in sales. I have not repeated it, and December was terrible, but
but that's amazing. And not to applaud December being terrible, but I think every single person that I've talked to has said December was awful.
It was down a lot for my handmade business too. So yeah, just across the board.
December was good for us. So that's crazy. Yeah, December was good for us, but that's also because the 2 prior months were not. So I feel like we could only go up from there. So
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, Tori, the same questions as well. Looking back at 2019, what lessons did you learn, and then what were you most proud of?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so lessons learned. We did a lot last year. Bill joined full time. We also tried the bins thing. So Brittany, I feel you here, because this is something, we were in Seattle and we would go to the bins. That's actually how we discovered that Bill had a knack for it, and that we enjoyed doing it together. So we started doing that, and I started shying away from my typical thrifting. And Brittany was actually very inspiring. She made a comment to me about, just when I stopped going to the regular thrift stores, my closet kind of changed. It didn't have the same, excitement or passion that I was looking for. So lessons learned is the bins is great, but you still have to pick up items that you're passionate about. And what we did at the end of the year, we ended up, now that we're in Spokane, I am going to the regular thrifts. I finally found my favorite places. So I am being very specific with what I pick up, and I'm picking up pieces that give me, excitement. Like when I hold it up and show Bill, when I get home, I'm like, look what I found. And I think that's important. And I also incorporated that into our Poshmark closets. So with Poshmark in my closet, it was, it was curated. Those of you that go to see my closet, it was very curated. I had a lot of vintage, but I also had like Forever 21 and H&M and a lot of Anthropology and Free People and things that I liked, but that I wasn't excited about. So at the end of the year, we ended up taking those pieces and putting them in Bill's closet. And then the other pieces that we weren't excited about, we donated, or we did a stale box swap. And now my closet really is, my inventory is less, but I'm really happy with what's in my Poshmark closet. And we're not just putting junk in the other closet. It's more, okay, now your closet is the main go-to, and mine is like a boutique. People can come and they know, just like with Brittany, they can come to your store and they know that they're going to get something that's unique and not just at the mall. So that was lessons learned from last year and how we applied that.
And I'm like really intrigued I know you and Bill are going through, and you have like a new name, and you were going through like some new changes, and I'm assuming this is part of it. And I'm like really excited to see how this does with putting, you know, all of that stuff into Bill's closet, how Bill's closet does, but then also having more of a, you know, curated boutique-y type closet. Because I kind of go back and forth. I like things, and if I want to buy them, I'm going to do them. I prefer to shop at retail thrift stores because I like the experience better. But then, like, the bins are, you can't beat the prices, you know? And so like, I go back and forth between the two. So I'm excited to watch this journey with the two of you.
Yeah, so excited. And it's going to lead into something else that I'm going to be doing that it's very along the same lines. I've kind of alluded to it, you know, essentially online, having an online store that's not just Poshmark or not just Etsy, that kind of thing. So that's where we're going.
Exciting.
We'll talk about that more later. But yeah, and most proud of so many things. Last year was just full of, you know, just being able to communicate with the community and speaking at PoshFest, I know that's a silly thing, but the fact that I was chosen, I mean, it was a crazy thing to be, but I think it helped our business because it also put me in that, you know, okay, I'm really gonna go head first into Poshmark. Bill's really into it. He came, so that was kind of a big thing from last year that I was proud of, and I think it did help my business.
And I think it's something to be really proud of. It's an exciting thing to be able to be picked out of all the people that, you know, submitted and all the millions of people on Poshmark to speak. People want to hear you. That is something to be very proud of.
It made me feel good. And I think, Brittany, did you nominated me? Did you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I did. I was like, I remember you said something, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so touched. So
that's amazing. Okay, so 2019 in the past, let's look into 2020, dig deep into our data. All three of us have gone through. Brittany's going to go through. Have you done a 2019, or you're going to do a kind of big, elaborate 2019 video?
I was going to sort of do that today, but I realized that a lot of what I would be saying was actually, it would be repeated from my goals video. So I did my really big deep dive in my goals video, and I didn't want to like push that further. So I wanted to sort of like take something shorter and more actively useful for the community and put that out there instead.
And I'm thinking of your goals video because I recently added the sell-through rates to the dashboard. And so I'm still trying to like feel the water in using them. And you talk a lot about the sell-through rates. And I was like, duh, like, we're like, I have to list more items to sell more. And I'm like, well, duh. Like, but that like never even dawned on me. So we all have videos out there looking at our 2019 data. I want to kind of dig a little bit deeper because we have a little bit of different strategies, and also just share with people what types of things that we're looking at. So if you're not familiar, I do have two dashboards, and we will be referring mainly to the dashboards. I think Tori does use her own financial tracking spreadsheet. But as far as like looking at average sale price and like inventory and stuff, the links for those are down below, and you can see videos on what we're talking about. But average sale price, so, and I think I probably know the answer to this, but let's start with Brittany. Are you more, there's kind of two strategies. You can either sell a lot of items, or you can sell really high price items, or you can kind of do a little bit of both. So kind of talk about what kind of seller you are, or what you're envisioning in the future, and why.
So I'm actually a little bit of both, and I particularly was through last year. So when I looked at my data, I was surprised to find that I think it was somewhere around like 25% of my sales are actually bundle sales. So I find that by having things at multiple price points, it really does encourage a lot of people to bundle items. And, you know, with those scarves and with all of my like boutique items, which are just like pins and jewelry and stuff like that, I'm really using those because they're lower priced items, but people don't necessarily want to pay, you know, $7 in shipping on a $10 pin. So while I do sometimes get like single sales from those, I also get a lot of people who add them to bundles with things that they want to purchase. And really the bottom line, like the total ASP for the bundle is what matters to me, and not necessarily the individual ASP. So I'll look at something and maybe they add 4 items to a bundle, and I'll look at it and say like, okay, I'm getting $25 for each item that they've bundled. I'm totally fine with that, and I'll accept that offer. So I'm not going to completely eliminate all of my smaller ticket items because they do really help with that bundle, sale. But I also just have to be like more careful about like what kind I'm picking up, and I want to be, I want them to fit like the theme of my closet. And the nice thing about the boutique items is that I can have like multiple quantities of the same thing. So I'm really only doing the work to list it once, and then I can have like 8 or 10 of them on hand, and I don't have to list 10 individual different items. So you can kind of get the time saved that way too.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm going to ask you a boutique question because I read that you do that before, and I hadn't thought to do that. Where do you get the boutique? Are you buying it like wholesale? I mean, I don't know
so it depends on where you live. If you live in New York City, there's actually like a whole district where you can go and just go into like actual like stores, and they have wholesale items, and you can just like pull them off the shelves and check out in the store. But where I get them from, because I live in Nashua, New Hampshire, is I use mostly AliExpress. And you do have to be very careful about what you're purchasing on AliExpress, because it is like a Chinese site. And so it's all Chinese manufacturing. And I have some like qualms about a lot of that stuff environmentally. So I have to be careful with that. And then they also are well known for like hijacking people's designs off of like Etsy and things like that. So I have to do research on the designs that I'm buying and making sure that they're not like poached from someone else. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like a super easy place to buy from, because there is a lot of like research that you have to do if you want to sort of approach it in any sort of moral fashion. But and then, there are wholesalers that you can talk to. Obviously, there's the wholesale market on Poshmark. I feel like that's overpriced, but the tricky thing about buying boutique is that for the most part, you have to have declared yourself a business. You have to have usually an LLC. You have to have a reseller ID number, a federal tax ID number. And a lot of times when you purchase wholesale, they'll want you to send like a previous good standing invoice, or they'll want a note of good standing from your state. So there's a lot of kind of hoops that you have to jump through.
One thing Renzo is saying, if you have a resale license, you can order wholesale online. And
that is true, but every single wholesaler is a little bit different. So some of them have different standards, and the ones that are going to be like higher dollar items, a lot of times they will want like a previous invoice from another company, basically like references. They want to know that you're serious about, because they'll assign you a rep and they'll go back and forth with you. But I don't do all of that yet. It is something that I'm thinking about for the future. But yeah, right now I just get my stuff online. So.
Okay. Interesting. That was a total sidetrack. I've been meaning to ask you, so here we go. Okay, so Tori, same question. Are you more of a quantity seller? And you can this between you and Bill, but if you want to speak to it a little bit more of a quantity seller or an ASP seller, a little bit of both, and why?
So quantity, it's always been quantity. I have never had a lot of luck finding a lot of quality pieces. So that's why we're kind of changing as we go into this new year, because what I found is the definition of quality is changing for me. Because last year, when I thought of quality, I thought of all those sellers that are doing, $50 and above sales. And I have rarely get any sales. I did a video on like my top selling items, and I had like nothing over $100. And a lot of people have sales over $100. I'm like, I can't get there. So for me, it was, last year specifically was, getting lower end pieces, selling more of those, because that's how we were going to make the money. We still have to do that because we don't have the higher end pieces. But one of the things I'm finding, especially as a vintage seller, is there are special vintage pieces that I have been selling for too little. And Brittany's always been super awesome with coming in and saying, Tori, that's too low. What are you doing? You know, because in my mind, I'm thinking Buffalo Exchange brain, where it's like, oh, well, you need to keep your vintage between like 18 and 20 bucks. Like, but now, you know, I did sell like a $98 vintage piece last year, which made me feel like, okay, it's possible. Which also has an impact. Oh, what's that?
The other hard thing with vintage is like you can't look up a comp. Like you can't look up the style number, and I mean, so you can kind of look up comps, but not to. So unless you really know the vintage, it's hard. I feel like to price it accordingly.
Exactly, and that's where you kind of have to trust your instincts. And so I know that I have good instincts. I mean, I trust my style. I really do. But I've just discounted my pricing so much that I kind of questioned on if it'll sell. But now, and that's going into, you know, this new strategy, focusing more on quality pieces. So if I find one quality piece, and there was one dress I picked up recently, Brittany, which, I mean, I can tell quality just from looking at it, because that's, you know, that just comes with the different seams and all of that stuff. I picked up this dress, and Brittany pulled up some comps, and there were some on First Dibs that were going for like $800 to $1,000.
Yeah.
And it's, so there, you can still find the quality pieces, but I'm going to do a little bit of a mix, but nothing that will get less than $10 is really what I'm hoping at. And that's with sending out offers to likers. So combination of all of it, but really trying to focus more on those quality pieces.
Yeah.
Okay, so top brands, and you actually very fittingly today, Brittany did a top brand. So definitely head over to her YouTube channel and watch it. It was fantastic. She brought up a couple of things, and I was like, I'm going to check that out for sure. But let's talk about your top brands and what metrics you use to quantify your top brands. There's in the dashboards, you can look at days on hand and sell-through rates and average sale price, your gross, or your total amount sold, your quantity. There's lots of different metrics, and depending on your strategy is going to depend on what you are going to qualify as a top brand. So I think GirlyGrrlStyle said that she had her dashboard brought up. And Brittany, you just went through your video. So let's start again. We'll just go, along the way. Brittany, let's go through your top brands and then how you decide it's a top brand.
So what I looked at when I was going through mine was my total dollar sold combined with my quantity sold. So the reason that I did that is because I want consistency, and you could have like maybe a Louis Vuitton purse that you sell and it's $1,400 and it comes in as your, number 3 top brand, but how often are you going to find that? So what I'm looking at is what have I consistently found and listed that has sold in a quantity enough to give me like a worthwhile bulk that's showing up on this dashboard. So my top brand, top of the top, was ModCloth. No surprise there. I have a ton of it in my closet, so I actually source a lot from my closet as well. I don't actually find a ton of it in the wild. I think that a lot of people think that I find it at thrift stores and stuff. I don't. I buy it on ThredUp. I source from my own closet. I buy from ModCloth's clearance sales.
So let me interrupt you real quick. When you're buying other places than thrift stores, are you buying it you're sourcing it to sell, or you're buying it for yourself and then you flip it?
Both. So sometimes I buy things for myself and I wear them once or twice and then I flip them. And sometimes I go on ModCloth's clearance sales and I sort out by lowest price, and I look to see, okay, is there anything that I think is actually a hidden gem that's worth it that I can sort of retail arbitrage and flip. And I have had good luck with that. And then if I shop on ThredUp or something like that, I'm specifically buying it to resell.
Interesting. And I've heard a lot of people saying that, and I love thrifting. I don't know that I could part of doing this is I really love going to the thrift stores.
Well, one of the nice things that I found, and especially when I had my little baby, was I didn't want to take him out to the thrift store, and I didn't have daycare, and I didn't have anyone to watch him. So a lot of that, like learning how to couch thrift is actually like really useful if you're disabled or you're just not able to get out of the house, or you don't have a car, or you have a little baby at home. Like there's so many different reasons that you might want to thrift online. And I'm finding that there is actually like a ton of places that you can do that. You know, there's Schoola, there's swap.com, there's ThreadUp, and there's a couple of vintage sites too. A lot of people source on eBay. So it's definitely like a lot of places, and like knowing how to do it can be really helpful. If you get snowed in, it's nice to sit by the fire and source. So
there's your next video.
Yeah.
And while Tori answers the question, can you type all those out in the comments?
All of what?
The store, all the places you just said.
Oh, you want all my secrets?
Yeah, a couple of them. You don't have to share all of them, but a couple of them. Because I think I've read a lot of people, and I was talking with a friend of mine today. I think a lot of resellers, not all, but a lot of resellers are people with a disability because they can work on their own schedule and from home.
Yeah.
And then a lot of moms. And so being able to source other places, I think would definitely be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, your turn, Tori. What are your top brands and what metrics do you look at to kind of decide?
So for me, I have my dashboard up because I love the data and I like to look at it, and it helps me formulate my ADD brain. So for me, what I'm looking at, my number one brand to sell is vintage. And that is based on quantity. So the number of pieces that I've sold, it's one of the highest brands that I've sold quantity-wise. Also with the price, so how much money I've made. So I've made most of my money from vintage, and that's because it's what I source. So the numbers I think are a little bit skewed because that is typically what I mostly sell. So you know, there's going to be that outlier. But if I'm looking at like brands specifically, so not just vintage, because vintage is like Anthro, you know, it's going to be a bucket that a lot of things fall in. But there are certain brands that I will always pick up that are definitely high return on investment, which are my top brands because of the monetary return on investment and days to flip. And that is like Fry. Fry is one of my, yeah, of course, Fry, no shocker there. What else? I have it pulled up here. So John Flubog, if I can ever find John Flubog, because Flubog is amazing. And then Doc Martens. I still have luck with Doc Martens 100%. And my average price for all of those is like $55 for the John Flubogs, and Fry $67 is the average sale price. So that's kind of, you know, those major brands and why I feel that those are my top ones.
Now those brands, do you feel that you find a lot, or are those more like BOLO brands for you?
Those are my BOLOs. Yeah, especially here in Spokane, it's very challenging. Doc Martens I do find, which is surprising. But yeah, the other is it's more like you see them. Oh, and then, of course, you have your Rothy's or Teaks or whatever. I found one pair of Teaks one time, and I was like, this is amazing. But yeah, that's a BOLO for sure.
So my daughter will go, I have a 2 and a 5-year-old and then a 14-year-old. And my 2-year-old is like, don't take him near a thrift store. He's chaos. But my 5-year-old will go with me for like, I don't know, a half hour maybe, but she's the perfect level. So like a lot of the thrift stores around us put like all of the flats on the bottom levels. So I've taught her what the bottom of Teaks look like. And so she like goes, Mommy, I think I found him. And she's like the perfect level. And she's also the perfect level to find like the Lululemon on the bottom of leggings. I'm already teaching her how to source.
Excellent.
We have a couple questions, I think. Oh, no, that was you. Brittany, you're talking with someone. Okay, I think we're good. I saw a question. That was
I couldn't figure out how to like actually chat on this thing. So I was like, oh, I'll just open YouTube in a separate window.
Oh, do you guys, because I have like the main, so I don't know what it looks like for you, but it's like on YouTube where it's like on the side.
Yeah, I have a private chat, and then I see live comments, but there's nowhere for me to type a comment. So
I think the private chat goes to everybody. Let me test. Did that go to everybody?
No, it went to the private chat.
Yeah. So that's it. Oh, yeah. So I see the private. I can see. Oh, yes.
Okay. So we can only chat to you.
Yeah. So if I want to tell you to say something, that's where I would tell you, hey, say this. Okay. Well, now I don't know how to get out of there back to the comments. Okay, there we go. So that's good to know for the future people to pull up YouTube. Okay, so we talked about our top brands. Now let's talk about top categories. What categories are you going to be looking for in based off of what you've done in the past? You've both looked at your data. What top categories are you looking at? And this will likely fall similar to the top brands, but maybe not. What metrics are you looking that are considered, make it a top category? Oh, we can talk. Sorry. Go ahead, Brittany.
I was just going in order here.
Oh, yeah, that's
So for top categories, I was looking at my average sale price. So for me, those were bags and dresses and shoes were my top 3 average sale price. And then I had tops was my most sold, but I think my average sale price was somewhere around $17. So it wasn't quite where I wanted to get my ASP to. But because it is one of my top sellers, I'm not going to stop sourcing it. I'm just going to start sourcing a little smarter and try and get that ASP up. Even if I can get it up to like $19 or $20, every single bit helps. But when I was looking at my ASP for the 3 top categories, I was like, you know what? Those all have good sell-through rates, and I want to get that money for it. So I'm going to be willing to sit on those particular items a little bit longer. So now where I used to try and have a 3-month sell-through rate, I'm giving all of those items a 6-month sell-through rate. So dresses, shoes, and bags are all going to have a longer time before I mark them down in my closet. I'm just going to give them more of a chance to sell at that higher price than I would for maybe a top, which because of the lower sell-through or the lower average sale price, I want to try and get in and out of my closet quickly. So that's kind of how I'm looking at that.
And you mentioned this in your last video, and it got me thinking because I'm moving towards a higher average sale price, mostly because of time. I'm trying to do, I stay at home with I don't have time, and so I'm like, I'm gonna and then I want to spend a little bit more time on YouTube and building up the analytics Facebook group. And so I'm looking more at, and now I forgot what I was gonna say with that. I went down on a tangent, and you brought up something. Oh, for letting it sit longer. So I have these price items, and I'm like, oh my god, it's been a week, and it hasn't sold yet. And so you really hit home when I watched your video talking a little bit about that too. If it's a higher price, I think it takes a more unique customer to come in and say, okay, I will spend $50 as opposed to, I'll spend $15. Like they'll easily spend the $15.
Yeah. And I notice that a lot with vintage too. Like I will have something, with Etsy, it's like a list it and forget it situation. So you don't have to like share or anything. All of your stuff just automatically renews. And I'll have someone come in and like, I've had something listed for 1.5 years and someone comes in and buys it full price. So it's just about finding that right customer. And I was a lot more patient on Etsy than I was on Poshmark. And I think that because you're sharing your items every day, because you're seeing them every day and clicking them and sort of touching them every single day, it feels like you've had them a lot longer than you have. So one of the things I started doing back in January of last year when I started my inventory system was to put a date code at the bottom of my listing so I can see like, okay, it feels like I've had this forever, but actually it's only been listed 1.5 months. So that's really helped me like calm down how much I'm sending out offers to people and what percentage I'm sending out offers as well.
That's on my list. It probably will never happen. I'm going to to go do that.
It's great.
But I can see it being helpful, especially now that Posh just added that extra field to easily.
Well, if you put it in the extra field, you can't see it easily. So if you put it at the bottom of your listing or at the end of your title, then you can see it at a glance. But if it's in that extra field, it's hidden unless you click on edit.
Yeah, and I'm not going to do that either.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tori, same question. Let's talk about your top categories. I wanted to say something on tops really quick too. So something that I notice on something that is selling at a lower price but faster, if I can find efficiency. So like, do you find that it's quicker to take pictures or list tops? Or is there any way that you could like, I don't do a lot of tops because I like to.
I'll actually show. So I have a very, very fast system. So I take my pictures and measure my items and inventory and bag them and put them away in under 5 minutes per item. So I have a sheet that I print out, and it's basically got spots for the brand, the size, the item description, the bust measurement, you know, all the different pieces, and then my inventory number at the end. And so, you know, I've got my sheet with me, and I go through, and with tops, I just do the bust and the length. I stopped doing sleeve and seam because I did a poll and found that nobody even gave two craps about it. So that has definitely sped up my listing. And I have a set number of pictures that I do. So I do top, side, back, a close-up detail of something interesting, and then tag photos, and that's it. So it's very quick, but you have to have like a system down, and it definitely does help.
Yeah. I love that sheet. It's amazing. I actually do some voice to text on Google Docs. So I can go through and be taking pictures and talk as I'm saying, so I don't have to like write it down. And then I find too, if you do like batch photos, if you have enough, you know, if you do all your shirts together and all your shoes together, everything's set up. That tends to help me as well. Okay. Sorry, Tori, I didn't mean to interrupt, but on to your top categories, and what metrics are you looking at?
Absolutely. And some of the comments that are coming through, Jacob was also commenting that it was hard for him to get used to not marking things down. I think that's something we all struggled with. I will tell you that was one of the things, like even this year, or the end of last year, I started really getting into closet clear out after Posh, after Posh Fest. And it just got to this point where you're seeing every day, don't forget, do offers to likers, don't forget, do closet clear out. And you're just, that mindset is get it out fast, get it out fast. That's where I'm stepping back, just like you, Brittany. It's like, okay, stop, let's make sure that it's listed for a long enough time, especially with unique pieces. They're not going to sell in the first couple of days. They're not. So I just wanted to, Jacob, I think most of us have been there 100%.
I still struggle with that. I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
Why is it selling?
And then let's see. And then Jacob, you said that you lose access to the hidden fields when it sells. You can actually still pull it up in your sales report, right?
Inventory report.
Inventory report. So yeah. So I mean, you still have to.
No, wait, you're right. No, it's a sales report because it's already sold.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
No, you're right.
I'm like, wait, what am I saying? Okay. So yeah, sales report. So it is there, but it's that extra work. So yeah. So for me, categories, this was not shocking. And I love the dashboard because it reiterated so many of the things that I thought or that I was like glancing at and I had a feeling. So it's just nice to see the hard data. For me, my top category is shoes, but we don't find a lot of shoes. So that kind of changes. Flexibility is important, right? But the reason that shoes is number one, same thing, average sale price. That's the first thing I looked at. Because I also, as I talked about, want to raise my average sale price. I want those quality pieces that I'm going to get more for, so it's less work. I do have a full-time job. I spend a lot of time on Poshmark. I spend a lot of time on YouTube. I spend a lot of time doing 1,000 other things. So if I could get that number up, I really want that. And it also is one of my top number of items sold. So it's not the top number of items sold. That is tops, but it's my average sell price is $13 for tops. So that's a lot of work without a lot of return. So yeah, no, that does impact what I'm looking for. I don't go down the top section unless I'm doing a mystery box swap and I need a lot of items to fill a box, Brittany.
I see in the working.
Yeah. There is something. Yes. But that, and then jackets. So jackets is the other one for me because jackets is something that, number one, my average sale price is about $20, which is great. That's where I want it, especially if my cost of goods is, around the $2.50 mark. And then I also sell a lot of them. They're my second highest selling item. So shoes, jackets, those are my best categories.
I don't want to interrupt. My husband told me in the last one I interrupted too much. So now I'm like overly cautious about it. But I did want to know on the closet clear out, like we see it all the time when we do it. And if you have the dashboard, we do a monthly deep dive where everyone, we test a scenario or I look at everyone's certain data. And a couple months ago, we did a closet clear out deep dive. So, one closet clear out, we all tried to drop our prices a certain amount and see if it encouraged sales. And one time nobody did anything. And, we did a couple different test scenarios, and the end result was it doesn't do jack. So that's just for the people that are out there and watching are like, closet clear out, do I want to partake or not? I mean, everybody is different, but on the large scale, when we tested it, the closet clear out was kind of like, womp womp. And then relisting, I'm going to go back to, I relist a lot because I can't source a lot. But Brittany, you've encouraged me to sit on items a little bit longer now, and so I'm gonna try. We're gonna see. I'm gonna try to not relist for 6 months, because then I can really look at the data too. Because what happens is that I relist, and then when I look at it, it's not really a true picture of what's happening because that item had been relisted, right?
Right. Yeah.
I don't really. So wish me luck in 6 months. See if I can do it.
So, one of the things that helped me was, do you remember? In my analysis video, I figured that I needed to get to somewhere around 800 listings, and you actually gave me the actual number. It was like 768 or something like that. So the more that you mark down items and try and clearance them out, the further you get from being able to achieve that goal number. So I've been really I'm trying to get to 800 items. Why am I going to take all these super low offers or send out super low, offer to likers if I'm trying to build my closet? So it's just counterintuitive. So.
And I think what's hard for me is I don't have a lot of time to source. So I'm trying to be more productive in my sourcing. Last time I went shopping last weekend and I got 81 items. It was ridiculous. And I have listed half of them already because I'm not focused on, there's other things on Posh that I'm not, closet clear out doesn't work. I'm not going to relist anymore. And I can spend time listing new items. Right. Yeah. So you kind of changed my mindset in that. We'll see how it goes. It's a fluid thing, I'll check back.
I will say this, if you do want to participate in a closet clear out, a Sunday or a Friday closet clear out is the best one that you can do. Never do a Monday one.
Yeah.
Well, and I've also seen that people that have a really heavy Instagram following, they will go on. This doesn't work for me because I don't, but a lot of people will go on and say, hey, I'm going to go do closet clear out today. Get into my closet now. And then that way, anyone that's interested, they're driven to their closet. And so then that way it makes sense. Still, that doesn't make sense for me, but I could see where they could benefit from that. But I just, for my business model, it does not work.
Yeah.
And I do want to note that we are only 3 people who sell on Poshmark, not everybody. So our strategies are also not the only strategies out there. I will continue to have different people on so we can talk about lots of different things. So I just want to note that we're not the end all be all of all things Poshmark. This is just what we've got for us. Okay, so sell-through rates. These were just recently added to the dashboard. I waited. I had a lot of people me for this and for size data, and I really hesitated in giving it because before we have the inventory report, if you're selling lots of dresses but all you buy is dresses, and that's not really telling you it's telling you something, but it's not really good qualitative or analytical data. So I waited. But then once I came out with the inventory report, I was like, yes, jackpot. We can look at sizes. We can look at subcategories in a useful way. So sell-through rates have been added. I'm still muddling through because it is a lot of data looking at your subcategories and your sizes by categories. So I want to talk a little bit about the sell-through rates with you guys. Did anything catch you by surprise with the sell-through rates? And then are you using them for your 2020 goals?
So yes, a lot of things I kind of expected, but shorts caught me really off guard. So I always thought that during the summertime, you need to be listing shorts. They do so well. When reality is, for me, they don't. So shorts had the longest average days on hand, and one of the lowest selling prices in my closet, and the sell-through rate, it was just terrible. I was just like, why do I even do this? It's a complete waste of my time. So I decided that even though I might still source shorts, unless they're a really good brand or I can list them for like $35 or more, I'm just going to take them to consignment. So it doesn't mean that I'm not going to pick them up at the bins, but it does mean that I'm not going to use my time to list them on Poshmark. So.
And a couple of things that I really looked at was I took those categories that we've already talked about, the ones that I thought were, my favorite or the highest selling. And then I went deeper because I wanted to find out if I'm going to continue to focus on shoes and on jackets, well, I want to spend my time wisely. So with shoes, it was interesting. I have sold all of the sizes of shoes that I've listed. So there hasn't been like a size that didn't sell, but definitely there were more sizes that sold 100% from listing, like size 8. So I did discover size 8 for me has sold. Every single size 8 that I've ever sold has sold. So that's interesting. And then jackets, because y'all know I love me, my jackets and my blazers, and I pick them up all the time. One thing that stood out to me is petites for me. I have on hand with none sold. The only ones that were listed there were petites. So that tells me that either if it's a vintage item and it says petite, I need to stop putting the petite in there because especially with vintage, the size doesn't matter. The size is important, but it's more of approximate measurements and estimate sizes. So I started doing that. I think it's going to work. And then petite, it just isn't for me something that seems to do well. And I got all that from just looking at that data, the real data, not just guessing. So that was really eye-opening.
Well, and that's something that I'm considering when I was looking at the sell-through rates. It wasn't necessarily like they're not selling, but like I need to recategorize things. Like I have a lot of vintage jeans that can be like unisex. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to try them in men's now or in whichever way and see because they're just sitting there. And then shoes as well. Like when I'm outsourcing and I'm like iffy about something, now I look at the size where before I didn't. And now like petites never sell for me or juniors. I don't know if you guys ever like.
Yeah, no juniors.
So I was considering and I was like, I don't want to be unethical and not put it under juniors if it's not, but also I might just put it under like a medium and see what people are sourcing. And skirts, that was the other thing. Skirts, skirts and dresses, you can only be a midi or a mini. And like there's knee length. Most of my dresses are knee length. So I'm going to go through and take them out and see if what I have on hand is going to sell just based off of recategorizing, which I would have never known without looking at the sell-through rates. So we are getting close to the end. This won't kick us off or anything, but I know that it's, getting bedtime for your kiddos, Brittany, and everyone has a life. But I do want to talk. We all sell vintage, and I love vintage. We all love vintage, but there's little quirks that everyone picks up different things. And so I want to know kind of what kind of vintage do you sell? Like if you specifically look for anything, or if you kind of are just open to all the vintage, or if you have like a little niche within vintage.
So I definitely have like things that I pick up. In particular, I do not believe that all vintage is created equal. There are some very ugly things that were made in the past and they need to stay at the thrift store.
But sometimes they need to be seen. Like the 80s, like big bows are so
Listen, you're talking to someone who went to the bins yesterday and picked up a fluorescent orange cape. So some things need to be seen.
Yes.
Other things don't. Yeah, so I particularly pick up a lot of like 50s stuff, 70s stuff, mod stuff, and then that like 80s, 90s stuff that you would kind of like see at Urban Outfitters. So the way that I like to think of it is like if ModCloth and Urban Outfitters like had a baby, that's me in vintage. So that's sort of what I sell. I do a lot, obviously, with novelty prints. If you can find good novelty prints in vintage, I'm always picking those up. But yeah, that's just what interests me. So that is what I sell. And it's not necessarily always stuff that I would wear. Like I sell a lot of like trousers or, things that I would kind of see on Pinterest or at Urban Outfitters, and I like the aesthetic and I like what people do with it, and I think that it's interesting, but I can separate myself from that because that's not like what I would wear. So I'm more of like the 50s and 70s person, and then I can still appreciate the other aesthetics. But
Yeah, and I'm kind of the opposite because I definitely buy things that I would wear. So that's, as opposed to just looking at the whole picture, because I have to narrow it down, because if not, I'd buy everything, right? So for me, it's like jackets. I love jackets. I live in jackets. I have a closet, a narrowed down personal closet, by the way. Got rid of some things, but lots of blazers. And I love the way vintage blazers fit. And I love to bring them into modern wear. So how, to make them more modern. So I look at jackets. I love dresses and the shapes of dresses, because even in the 80s, there were so many super cool shapes that we don't see today. So you'll get the broad shoulder and then the cinched in waist with the tulip skirt and then the patterns. So like Brittany, I love a great pattern. I think that the colors and the patterns, that's something that's gonna, have you stand out. And when I'm looking for my vintage pieces, I think of not just myself, but who my audience is, who my girl is. What would she want to be seen in? Does she want to wear a pair of, black vintage, a black vintage dress? I have a few of those, but there has to be something about it that makes it stand out, that makes it a special piece. So that's kind of for me, the color, the shapes. I don't do a lot of, I think 50s, that's harder for me, because that style isn't a style that I can modernize very well, if that makes sense for me.
No, you have to go like full retro to like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
so it's a little bit harder.
I love the 50s, and I love a lot of the things that you are listing, Brittany, but I don't see it a lot. So I think some of it is your sourcing. I find, and maybe I just know 80s better, I find so much stuff from the 80s and I love it. I did not say no to an 80s prom dress to save my life. And I saw a lot of them, but they're just absolutely amazing. But I don't see a lot of 50s stuff. I think the thrift stores in my area, most of them save a lot of their vintage for Halloween.
Yeah.
And so I don't, so sometimes the 80s slips through because it's not necessary, they're not that up to date on trends.
So for all of that older stuff, there's you learn some tricks when you're a vintage seller. So actually the bins are really good, because a lot of times Goodwill, they don't want to put that older stuff out, or they might get a whole closet donation and they just toss it all into the bins. So I found some stuff that way. Estate sales, this Saturday, I'm going to an estate sale. It's supposed to be vintage clothing from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So I'm super excited about that. Yeah, follow along on my Instagram for that one. And then also I go to a vintage fashion show every year in Sturbridge, Massachusetts, and it's a pay per enter, and the prices are a little bit higher. But it's just a kind of culmination of all these people selling vintage. So I'm able to kind of go through and pick out some of those novelty prints, and you pay up for them. It's not like I'm paying, $5 or $6. I might pay $25 to $50 for a dress, but when I sell it for $150, that's more worth it. And then after that, there's the Brimfield Flea Market. So that is a whole week of vintage, and there's actually a vintage fashion tent, and you can find specific people who, if you're at a flea market and you see this guy and he's got a ton of tools and train cars and stuff, and this one vintage dress hanging off to the side, he doesn't want that. He doesn't want to tote it around with him. So if you go up and you're
that's how much you want to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. And they're usually I don't know, $5. And then if you start to walk away, they're wait, $3, take it. So,
Well, Brittany, how do you find the time to source all these places? Because in my mind, I've got my 2 places that I go to, because I don't have time to source. I mean, literally, I think it's 3 hours a week is all I have. So I mean, how do you find the time? You're a superwoman.
Well, with the Brimfield trip and the textile show, those are back to back. So it's a Monday, and then Brimfield starts right after that. And I make a special trip every single year. So I go with a friend, we go get a hotel room. And it's only about an hour drive, but it's nice to stay down there. And then you wake up early and you go down to Brimfield. During the summers, flea marketing on a Sunday is always kind of fun for me. I can take my kids. It's just kind of I just love to do it. So I just squeeze in time whenever I can.
That's awesome.
How old are your kids? Your kids are still little, right?
Yeah, 19 months and 4 years.
and your 19-month will go. I want to take my 2-year-old anywhere. Like, he's awful. I don't want to say awful. He's
out a lot, so he likes to ride in the cart.
Yeah.
And then my 4-year-old thinks like thrifting is the best thing ever. He always wants to go to the Goodwill bins because he gets toys.
Oh yeah, right. And that's how I can bribe my 5-year-old. But my 2-year-old is like not having it.
Yeah.
All right. So let's wrap it up. A couple questions. Tori, we have talked the reseller side, but you also have YouTube, Instagram, but your YouTube is like really popping. I've noticed you're doing a lot of videos out there. You and Bill, we talked on it. You're starting a new venture. Anything you want to talk about, tell us about your YouTube and where you're kind of seeing things going this year?
So yeah, we're trying new things. Poshmark is great, but it's only one avenue. And I've always been a proponent of having multiple streams of income and being really transparent. So one of the things that we are looking into, and I mentioned it earlier, is doing an actual storefront instead of just relying on Poshmark, because for us, cross-listing, it's just not something that we get passionate about. I don't have the time to do it. But going back to YouTube, so that's connected because we just created a new brand that's a joint brand that represents the both of us. And it's not what we've been doing up to this point has been GirlyGrrlStyle, 324 Finds. We're, two people running a business, but we're separate. So we're really trying to bring the two of us together since we've been doing it for the last 8 months together. And we're going to be doing more of those lives that we talked about. So more live, just like you said, all these live interactions. We're looking at doing a Patreon group, something like that, where we can give one-on-one information to people. Because we've had people ask for like special tutoring, and we're not talking about major expenses here. We're not doing classes. I'm not gonna say I don't believe in it. That's not our direction, but just really being able to find the time for us to give back even more than we are. And then, like I mentioned, or you mentioned, our goal for $10,000 to charity this year. So we're essentially going to be donating all of our reseller income this year. We're planning on our goal is to get $800 a month to different charities. So we want to do a different charity every single month. So then that way it's, we can spread it around. So we've always given a lot anyway, but by setting that monetary goal, I think it just makes a big impact. So,
well, you're simply amazing. Like,
and so are you, both of you.
Okay, so Brittany, you're focusing, and you didn't mention this, sizes. I've read on your Instagram and some on your YouTube as well that you're trying to diversify your sizes. Kind of tell me a little bit about how you came to this and I have a hard time. I like it in theory, but I don't find all the sizes all the time, right? So kind of walk us through a little bit of that.
So, being a part of that ModCloth group, ModCloth is one of those companies who does preach, size inclusivity. And so naturally, like the gathering of women that are in those groups are very like a variety of sizes and just like very inclusive. There's a lot of body positivity in that group. So it's just great to see like so many different women just like killing it in all different sizes. They might wear the same dress and it's just like, it looks amazing on everybody. And I think that there's just not a lot of companies out there, and there's not a lot of resellers out there who make it a point to be size inclusive. Anything from like the language, like I don't really like to say, the like plus size. It's just a different size. So I usually use like extended sizes. And so from everything to like your language and like your cover shots, like, are you selling a plus size dress, but you're using the stock image of like a really skinny model? Like they don't want to see that, it's not like an actual accurate representation of, the garment that you're trying to sell. So all of that kind of just like came together, in this year. And my extended sizes always have sold really well, especially like 1X to 3X. And the buyers they offer like really reasonable prices. They come back again and again. They're always so happy with their stuff. And I just do really well with it. So I made it a point that this year I was going to, get a plus size mannequin can, so it's only a size 1X. It's not like, you know, it's still on the smaller side, I guess, but it is better than this, like representing those things either on a hanger or with the size 8 dress form that I have. And so I've just kind of been pushing for that. And obviously you could like a lot of thrift stores do have like a plus size section now. So I do kind of comb through that. On the other hand, I also feel sort of bad like buying the really cute items out of those sections when I feel like there's not a lot of offerings for the customers in the store who might be looking for those anyway. So what I've been doing is like in my ModCloth groups or in other groups, I will see people that say, you know, I really need to clean out my closet, but I just don't have time to list all this stuff on Poshmark. And I'll contact them and be like, hey, I saw that you want to clean out your closet, but you don't have time to list this stuff on Poshmark. I sell on Poshmark. You know, if you're willing to let me resell this stuff, I'll buy it outright from you. You know, I can't pay a ton, but I can give you like a decent amount for it. And I do tend to pay like a higher price for my extended size stuff, but I'm kind of sourcing it in unusual places. And then actually the bins have been pretty good for me finding some stuff, and I don't have any qualms about picking that stuff up there, because if I don't pick it up, it's going to get, you know, tossed into the recycle pile at the end of the day anyway. So.
Well, you are like a natural hustler. I mean, you have like your hands in all the different sourcing places. When I'm like you, Tori. I have like my 3 places, and I'm like, I'm gonna go somewhere else, and then I'm like, I don't want to drive any further. Like, I only have so many hours to source. I don't want to spend the time, and I always find good things, you know. But I do think you've brought out some valid points. I may start looking into doing some, what did you call it, couch thrifting.
Yeah.
Go to bed when I am, because oftentimes I rarely have a death pile because I don't have enough time to usually source. So we have gone over an hour, so I am going to wrap it up. Any last pieces of advice on anything reseller, if you want to put it out there?
Wow. Okay, Tori, you go first now.
You know, just something that was top of mind today for reselling in general is just making sure that you have multiple streams of income. And I'm going to say this today because it's something that's really relevant to me right now. You know, I think that applies to everybody. So whether you're cross-listing on different platforms, you are out there making money on YouTube, or talking to people in your, you know, ModCloth group or whatever it is, using Facebook Marketplace. You know, doing a side hustle other than selling clothes, whatever that is, I think it's so important. So I'm going to stand by that today as my most important tip of the day, is just make sure you diversify. So in case something happens, like Poshmark server going down, you don't feel it as much as you might have. So that's it.
And I agree. And I think, and I've seen a couple, you know, bigger resellers say this, but reselling is only getting bigger, and so you're going to get more saturated and you're going to get more people, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't do it. It just means that we have to do it smarter and diversify and figure out ways to make it work. And business is fluid, and you have to constantly be looking back at your strategies.
Exactly. And remember, so I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm not online, mind you, not online, but it's the same thing. It's happened many years ago. Everyone said it's slowing down, it's saturated, we're never going to be able to continue to build this. And you know what? Yeah, we are. It's just being flexible, being just very mindful. So yeah.
Agree.
I will say that when you're looking at your different streams of income, don't necessarily consider like eBay one string of income and Mercari another string of income. It's like, it's all of that is kind of in the like reselling realm, and you don't want to like overextend yourself trying to cross post all these different places that you can't commit to. You need to look at achieving income from different things that are maybe like passive, or that don't necessarily require like active attention all of the time, and aren't necessarily all like the same thing, but in different places, if that makes sense.
Right. And I've kind of, I noted on this on my 2020 goals, I'm going to touch base in Q2. I'm on Poshmark and on eBay. And I feel like I may be overextended, and it may not. I mean, it's a cost benefit. I'm spending more time on eBay. Is it really worth my time, or could I be doing things elsewhere? And you always have to be looking at these things and considering them. So that's it. I'm going to wrap this up. You guys have been absolutely lovely. If you guys like videos like this, or if you liked it, give us a like. You can definitely leave comments here. We will check back and answer them. Everyone's links for all of their things that they're doing are going to be in the description down below. I think that's it. Make sure to fill out my survey. I'm super excited to do it. The more data that I have, the better analysis I'm going to be able to do. So that's it. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.
Bye. Thanks for watching.
Yes, thanks so much. Oh, now I have to end it. Oh, there we go. My mouse turned off. There we go. Okay.